Welcome to the Rent Estate Podcast, a conversation on how you can achieve retirement security, financial freedom, and the new American dream through rental property investments. And here's your host, Kevin Ortner, CEO of Renters Warehouse.
All right, welcome back. This is episode number 5 of the Rent Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ortner, CEO of Renters Warehouse. Thanks for being with us. Excited to have you join, whether you're listening or watching. We appreciate your support of the podcast. Here on the Rent Estate Podcast, we're talking about gaining financial freedom, retirement security, financial independence using single-family real estate investments, and doing interviews with property management professionals and true seasoned real estate investors to get their stories and hopefully mine some of the gold out of all their brains there and share it with everybody listening, and hopefully have some great takeaways, whether you're a new investor or a seasoned investor alike. For those tuning in for the first time and might not know me or Renters Warehouse, I've been investing in real estate for over 18 years and helping others do the same for over a decade. Renters Warehouse really exists to be a guide to help those who are seeking financial independence and financial freedom and retirement security. And we believe that investors deserve a partner to execute on that investment strategy with ease. With that, we really want to help people get through the confusion and complexity that can come with this sometimes. So I'm excited to have our next guest on here, Mark Hanson. He's going to take us through the beginning parts of the strategy around investing in real estate. But it's really with the mindset we have around helping people, guide them through this process, that we created a process that's helped over 50,000 real estate investors across the country. We now manage over 23,000 homes, making us the largest real estate investment company in America. With the goal of this podcast really, again, is to share the success stories, the tips and tricks, and ensure that those investing in single-family rentals can avoid the pitfalls that we've all experienced, hopefully save some of the lost time, headaches, and heartaches to achieve true financial freedom, passive income, so they can spend more time doing what they love with the people that they love. So with that, Mark, awesome. I'm super excited to have you on. You've been buying and selling investment properties in real estate for, almost 13 years?
Correct.
And more importantly, been leasing properties and running a team of leasing agents here in the Twin Cities for a couple of years. And I think success in this business really starts with a good tenant, right? So I think that leasing part is super important. And I'm really excited to get some of your insight out today for the audience that's listening and watching. But before we jump into business, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I got my license in 2006. I worked for a company called Wallen Properties, and we had the HUD contract for the state of Minnesota. So for those of you unfamiliar with HUD properties, they're government-owned foreclosures. If somebody got their financing through an FHA loan and got foreclosed on, we would get those listings. When we got the contract, it wasn't that big of a deal because the market was ascending and it was pretty hard to get foreclosed on. You know, if you couldn't make the payments anymore, you'd just sell it for a profit.
Right.
But then the housing market crashed, and all of a sudden we were kind of the envy of the ball when everybody was. We were getting 100 plus listings a week for us to put on the market. So. Came from that world dealing with HUD properties, and then like anything, any government program, they decided to change it. We had
Sounds right.
We had that contract for about 8 years, and they said that a brokerage couldn't have it for more than 5. So they gave us So they said basically 6 months from now, you need to find something else to do. So that's what led me to Renters Warehouse. It was a good fit, kind of a different angle on the same puzzle. Instead of helping people buy those properties, I was helping them lease them out. So I was dealing actually with a lot of the same customers, just doing different services for them.
Sure.
So,
and I imagine over your time at Renters Warehouse, you've probably leased hundreds of homes?
Yeah, just over 300
Okay.
in 3 years. So
Wow.
pretty much seen it all.
Yeah.
And actually before then, I was leasing my own properties that I bought, and,
Right.
and it took me about 3 or 4 months here to realize how poorly I was doing and how many systems I didn't have in place to protect myself as a landlord. So it was really kind of a big eye opener for me to realize what I was doing wrong.
That's a great segue to the first question I had for you, which is really what are your top 3 tips for landlords when it comes to finding the right tenant? Again, I think finding the right tenant, I already said it once, but I'll probably say it 20 times in this episode. It's so important. It makes the rest of owning this investment so much easier, makes the property management side, the operations side of the business so much easier, especially if you're doing it yourself. So that right tenant is so important. And so what are your top 3 tips for landlords around finding the right tenant for their home?
Well, number one is probably the background check. Make sure that you're doing your research on the person. I prefer obviously hiring a professional company to do it because they have those systems in place. Number 2, and I think it goes a little bit back to pricing. I want to tell you at least what I do for my own properties is I'll run a market analysis on the property, and let's say it comes out to $1,500 a month. That's fair market value. I'll list my own properties for $1,450, $1,400, and give up that $600, $1,000 a year to kind of create a blood in the water feeding frenzy of tenants trying to kick down the door and get into my property, which enables me as a landlord for my own properties to be very selective on who I pick. So it's interesting when you meet with people for a rental analysis, kind of depending on what their motivations is, and if their motivation is to have a great tenant, is I'll offer that strategy. Give up a little bit on the back end to know that you have a tenant that has great rental history, good income, credit score, those types of things.
Right.
So
that's good. Where you're talking about background checks, and I run into far too many people who are leasing their homes themselves, doing their property management themselves, running their investment strategy themselves. And again, I think that's great because it's not rocket science what we do. Renters Warehouse exists to help people scale in it or give them their time back, or maybe help them make a little bit more money while doing this. But a lot of people do it themselves, and it almost horrifies me sometimes hearing the stories about what people are forgetting to do when finding that right tenant, whether it's background checks or not thorough background checks. What's your advice to landlords around what do you got to dive into in that background and credit check?
Well, quick story on my own properties. Before I was here, I just did it on a handshake. Seems like a good guy. Let's sign the lease. I was Googling leases. I was probably, for all I know, doing a 3-page California lease that had nothing to do with Minnesota. So I made pretty much every mistake you could make. Knock on wood, got extremely lucky. Didn't have any of the horror stories, but set myself up for those to happen with the process I was doing. So to have somebody professionally doing that for you, and especially when you're first getting started out, to know that process is huge. And it's different I found, at least working with investors, they'll look at different things on the background check. If they get burned by somebody with poor credit, that's the next time around, that's what they're looking for.
Right.
If they get burned on someone not having rental history, that's, I've had investors say, I don't care what their credit is, I don't care their income, just call their previous landlord, and if they'd rent to them again, I'll take them. So it's kind of different for every landlord. My recommendation is to look at the entire picture, factor all of that in kind of independently and look for red flags. Having somebody that has looked at those reports frequently and knows what red flags to look for is a big plus too.
For sure. I think it's important that people out there listening and watching understand that if you Google a credit check for tenants online, you get a ton of different services that pop up, and some of them range from $4.95 for a credit background check to $30, $40 for the package. And probably far too often people are clicking on that $4.95 one, not realizing that really all it's doing is giving you a credit score.
Right.
One number.
Right.
It's not giving you the full credit package to understand why the score is what the score is, which might actually lead you to disqualify someone that you might have selected otherwise. Because if you can understand why someone has a 650 credit score, a 620 credit score, a 600 credit score, sometimes those end up being great paying tenants, but they had a really big medical issue 5 years ago they're still paying for. Right. They had a $100,000 medical debt that dropped their credit score, but they've always paid their car payments on time, their housing payments on time, their rent payments on time, their credit card pay, all that stuff on time. It's this one thing that brought it down. So you can disqualify people maybe falsely by doing that. But even more important is you don't get any of the criminal background check. Right. You don't get the national search, the state search, all that kind of stuff. So invest the extra $20, the extra $30 into a legitimate, full criminal background and credit reference check, right? And not just going to that kind of cheap option that's there. And you can pass this expense on to your tenants, right? We charge background check fees at Renters Warehouse. Most landlords do. It's not going to make you uncompetitive
Right.
to say, I don't have a background check fee.
Right.
People are used to paying them. It's part of the deal. And so just cover the cost.
Right.
Pass that on to the tenant and make sure you get a good background check, right? Then when it comes to references, how do you feel about references? There's an argument out there I know that says the most previous landlord, even if it's a bad tenant, sometimes might just not say much because they want to make sure the tenant moves out of their house. And so there's a philosophy I know by some of our agents actually inside the company that the most important reference they call is not the most current previous landlord, but the previous
one
landlord,
before that.
right?
Yep.
Did you ever do that, or do you talk to your agents about that today?
Yeah. Well, most of the time when they come in and to make yourself efficient, I always felt like a third of the applications that have come in are like no-brainer no's.
Right.
They just don't. Why make the time to invest to call those previous landlords if their credit score is X and they have whatever felonies or stuff like that on their record that automatically disqualify them? Then there's also on the opposite side, there's probably a third of them that are almost like no-brainer yeses.
Sure.
They have 800 plus credit score and income up, and all that type of stuff. So it's kind of that gray area where I'm going to really do the digging, where it's like, hey, I could see some owners approving this tenant. I could see some not. Let's really dig into, like you said, not only the first one in line, but the second landlord as well.
Sure.
And do some digging on there. So I train the agents to ask 3 questions. 1, would you rent to them again? Did they pay rent on time? Did they leave the property in good repair? With legalities and stuff, a lot of times they're kind of cautious about what they say, which is understandable, but they'll generally answer those 3 questions.
Right. So you mentioned pricing your property, your personal properties. If it's going to rent for $1,450, you might list it for $1,400 to kind of get more applicants to look from. I think pricing is challenging sometimes for even professionals, depending on where the property's at, or if it's a unique property. But it certainly can be, I think, one of the more challenging aspects of a do-it-yourself landlord looking to lease their home, really understanding what can I get for rent. And I've run into a lot of people who are probably charging $200 too little.
Correct.
And then, of course, you get people who are overpricing it and it takes forever to rent the home. There's probably plenty of people who get it right on. But what are your tips for people when it comes to pricing the rental? How do you figure out how to price it, where to look, how should you price it? Do you want to be competitive? Do you want to be high? Do you want to be low?
Right.
What are your thoughts on pricing?
Well, personally, I think that's why our rental analysis that we have at Renters Warehouse, that face-to-face meeting is so important. There's been times where you have the exact same townhouse, exact same floor plan, where you're meeting with 2 different owners that have 2 different motivations.
Sure.
They could be in exactly the same condition where you might recommend a different price point for each one. If there's someone like me that's not as price sensitive, you might explain to them, hey, if we discount it a little bit, people with good credit score make good financial decisions. They don't overpay for things in general.
Right.
So if you want to attract people like that, you should offer it at a discount price. Where there's some people that are really price sensitive, and cash flow is a big issue. It could be the same townhouse. For one owner, you're recommending $1,500 a month, and for another, you're recommending $1,400 a month, depending on what they're looking for.
It's all about the strategy, right?
Right.
What's their strategy? What's their long-term strategy?
Right.
So how about you get it priced? Great. Where should real estate investors market their homes to rent? Where are you going to find the tenants?
Everywhere online.
Okay.
Everywhere online. The days of putting it in the newspaper are gone.
Yeah.
I'm probably dating myself by saying that, but
no, that's not true. Can you believe that there actually still is a housing section in the newspapers?
I wasn't aware there were still
There
newspapers.
is. Well, there's still newspapers,
Yeah.
and there's still actually. I haven't looked lately, but
Right.
within the last year, I picked up the paper for an experiment to open up. Now it's not as big as it used to be, but there's still a classified section, and there's still a housing section, and people still pay to put their house in the newspaper,
Yep.
which blows my mind.
Right. And you see it up north, like when you go up to the cabins.
Yeah.
They'll have those property books,
Yes.
the magazines.
Yep.
They used to have those in the cities as well. I don't
Yeah.
see those anymore either.
Right.
But basically, to answer your question, you should be everywhere online. I mean, we syndicate our listings to over 230 websites. Not only the big ones, the small ones. That's where people are looking for property.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Zillow's really taken over the world, right?
Right.
And Zillow now offers rentals, and so if you're someone that's out there trying to rent your home, getting onto the Zillow platform is super important. They've got 3 or 4 different websites that are all Zillow brand. Getting on those is important.
Side note on that, I saw a preview of our website changes that are coming. Todd showed me, and that looks sick.
It's going to be awesome, right?
It looks sick.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So so we talked a lot about leasing, the importance of finding the right tenant, doing a background check, pricing the home right, advertising where the eyeballs are, which is online. You know, a study from 3 years ago, which I'm sure the numbers have gone higher, but 3 years ago, it was like 94% of all tenants look for the next rental online.
Right.
That makes total sense. It's probably closer to 100 now.
Right.
And of those 93% that found them online, a big percentage, I don't remember the numbers several years ago, but a big percentage looked at, more than 3 websites. Mm-hmm. So you want to be, to your point, on all of the top websites you can. And sometimes it's expensive. Right. It might be $100 a month to get a premier listing on rentals.com or Rental Homes Plus or Zillow, but it's worth it because you're going to get the eyeballs. Right.
Well, and to that point, you were saying that anybody can do what we do, and I agree with that, but I challenge someone to put their property on 230 websites. We'll see you next month.
Yeah, right.
And probably thousands of dollars in subscription charges and et cetera.
We do spend a lot of money marketing those properties and being at all, but that's because that's important. It's a big part of what we do is leasing those homes quickly and getting the most eyeballs on them we can. Obviously, having a lot of volume and renting, across the country, well over 1,000 homes a month, we're on those platforms. Right. And we have premier listings on those platforms. And that's one of the benefits of working with a professional property manager as well. But obviously that leasing part's important. I was going to chat a little bit about lease agreements with you, but I'm super excited to jump into the other side of this business, which is buying investment properties. And I think there's a lot of people who watch the podcast, listen to the podcast, that are just getting started in real estate investing, trying to figure out if it's right for them, how to execute on a plan, how to create a plan in the first place. And you've been doing this for 13 years. You've been in the investment space for a long time. Let's talk about it. We got the new website launching, renterswarehouse.com. It is now, not only can you look at tenanted homes for sale across the country. So on our investor marketplace at Renters Warehouse, you can actually look at single-family rental properties for sale with tenants in place across the country. About 850 exclusive listings that you can look at there. But just recently, we integrated the MLS with the website. And while that doesn't sound special on its own, what we've allowed people to do is actually sort all MLS properties based on whatever financial metrics they want to look at, whether that's gross yield, net yield, cash flow, ROI, whatever it might be. And we're the only site to be able to do it on a large scale across the country. So it's super exciting. You said you just got to take a look at it. Mm-hmm. Tell me your thoughts.
I was speaking with Todd in IT yesterday about it after he did the demo, and as an investor, to go to the MLS just makes no sense, in my opinion. I mean, you're getting all those properties anyway, and you're filtering them. I think the number Greg Rand, our chief strategy officer, talks about is there's over 1 million transactions a year by people that aren't moving into the property.
Right.
And to target all those people should be going to our website here in the next couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah, there's 1 million real estate transactions a year, roughly 1.2 million last year, that were homes sold to investors. Right. So about 20% of all the homes sold across the United States any given year are sold to investors, and they're doing it the hard way.
Right.
They're looking at a home on the MLS that's vacant and trying to figure out how much it would rent for, trying to figure out the expense loads on the property, figuring out the tax. They got a spreadsheet. They do all the work. It's hours of time the hard way.
Right.
The new way, the Renters Warehouse way, it's instantaneous.
Right.
It's pretty amazing. You can sort by market, and like I said, sort by whatever financial metrics are important to you as a real estate investor. And that's just really exciting. So check that out. We try not to do too many shameless plugs here on the podcast, but this is just super exciting, and it's really taking and creating a new category in real estate investing, and that is making it easy for real estate investors to get access to as many properties as you ever want to see, and sort it by yield and ROI and really create an investment strategy and plan with it. So that said, what do you think, in your opinion? You've been in the business 13 years. You've been leasing homes forever. You are a real estate investor. What's the best kind of rental property for people to look at?
Again, it kind of depends on your goals and that type of thing. Like personally, I prefer townhomes because I never want to pick up a shovel and mow the yard in the summer if it's sitting vacant. So, but it really kind of depends. The number I use with my team is, in my opinion, probably 70% of what's on MLS
Right.
make sense as an investment property.
Right.
So the majority of the things that you can buy make sense.
What's the easiest property to rent, size-wise? I'm curious if you agree with me. I'll just put it out there. I often tell people, look, if you're going to get your first investment, maybe a townhome is the right way to go. I've got a few of those myself. But when we're talking about size, it's like kind of first-time home buyer thing, right?
Yep.
3-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. I don't know, 1,700 square feet, 1,700 square feet. Like a good first-time home buyer program house, I think, is almost any market across the country. Probably want to just it's a sweet spot that you're always gonna have it rented out. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You get into trouble a little bit sometimes with executive type properties or lakefront and those, kind of those higher end type properties. Same with, if you're buying a condo that might be a little too small,
right?
Where they're just
the one bedrooms are hard to rent, right? The studios,
exactly, yeah.
2 bedrooms are even kind of tough to rent,
right?
Oftentimes people, even if it's a young professional couple, they want a guest bedroom, maybe an office kind of thing. So you really, I think, want to stick with 3 bedrooms or larger,
right?
But you also don't want to get too large. You got to kind of find that sweet spot, and that's probably a large percentage of our properties at Renters Warehouse fit into the 3 bedrooms,
right?
4 bedrooms, 2 3-baths,
Yep.
2-car garage. I tell people to avoid swimming pools, right, for the liability, things like that. But it's really exciting. We mentioned the website. We just talked a lot about it. As a new real estate investor, check the site out, play with the research center. You can research different markets, understand how market trends are performing across the country, build a fantasy portfolio, add things into your shopping cart, understand what your portfolio might look like from a return perspective, et cetera. Really, really cool. But we're also, I think, empowering real estate agents in a new way here at Renters Warehouse as well, right? And allowing them to stand out and get business based on what they know versus who they know, right, and stand out from the crowd of tens of thousands of real estate agents in every market, and be different. So as the guy at Renters Warehouse in the Twin Cities who leads our leasing team and our sales agent team, what do you talk? I mean, we're sitting here. I pulled you out of a class. You have a whole class of new recruits that have come on and are joining our team to be real estate investment professionals. What sets Renters Warehouse apart when it comes to being let's talk to the real estate agents listening, and what are we doing to make real estate agents successful here, and how are we different?
Sure. Well, to me, it's a full suite of services is kind of where it starts. For years we did basically offer 2 main core services of tenant placement and property management. We did that very well. But now that we're adding this buy-sell piece to it, obviously that increases revenue streams for the agents.
Right.
And it also, to me, it kind of paints the picture of why we did those 2 services for so long.
Right.
We would find tenants, we'd manage it. Well, why are you doing that? And the idea is to grow a portfolio, to grow that independent wealth. Like I said back at the very beginning, when I was in HUD properties, had I known now what I know, or had I known then what I know now,
yeah.
I was in the buy, get something maybe at 65% of appraised value, clean it, put a new carpet, paint it, sell it at 85% of new appraised value, and make $10,000, $13,000, $15,000, rinse and repeat, keep doing that over and over. Had I been smart, I would have, no offense to you, I probably wouldn't be working for you right now if I would have all those.
Yes, you would. I'm so awesome and amazing.
Yeah, all those properties that I did, if I would have held on to them, from 10, 15 years ago or whatever, I'd be in a much different shape now. So I guess to educate our clients on the potential of what, instead of just being an accidental landlord, of the potential of where this could be in 15, 20 years. So that's why I'm hiring new people is to have kind of those more in-depth conversations, and how do we partner together for the next 15, 20, 30 years
which creates an amazing book of recurring transactions that doesn't happen in traditional real estate often.
Right.
What is it? On average, people move every 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes they call you back, sometimes they don't, depending on how good of an agent you are with your CRM and your contacts and your relationship management, everything like that. When we're talking about investor clients, they are hopefully our core client. Our client avatar is someone who's going to buy a house every couple of years, have us lease that home for them, have us manage the home for them. And so you've got new home investment property sales to your clients. You're leasing the homes for them. and they keep coming back, and you really create a really neat, I think, recurring revenue stream.
Right.
And it also, the amount of technology we have now at Renters Warehouse and our consumer-facing technology and our agent technology really allows people to stand out and offer a different product and service than a traditional real estate agent, right?
Right. Yeah. If I'm encouraging my agents, if you work out a plan with your client, I'm going to buy 3 properties a year for the next 4 years, and then I'm going to lease those out. You're basically scheduling your commissions as an agent. Like,
right.
If you have
That's nice.
Yeah. I mean, where else does that happen? So to me, that's the benefit of it is getting that, I'm going to buy 1 house a year for the next 5 years. Great. As long as you're with me, I'm going to have 5 commissions and 5 leasing commissions,
Right.
So, and not only that, you're just really helping people too. So
that's just
everybody
it.
wins.
This segment, these 20%, 1 million transactions a year are done by traditional real estate agents, many of them very, very good, but most of them who don't focus on real estate investments.
Right.
They'll do any transaction that comes their way, from an executive home
Right.
to a first-time home buyer to a whatever it is.
Right.
And oftentimes don't know the ins and outs of the leasing side, how much we can rent it for, the expense loads on the property, the returns, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so we're really building the first business that focuses on the real estate investor full cycle.
Right.
From planning a real estate investment plan to figuring out what markets we want to go into, to executing on that first property, leasing the home, managing the home, and then growing with them from there. Very, very unique. Lots of powerful technology and transparency there, and a great way for real estate agents to stand out. So if you're watching and you want to learn more about how to be a real estate investment advisor with Renters Warehouse, go to the website, renterswarehouse.com, check us out. We're offering something very unique, a new category in real estate, and really changing the game. So that's really exciting. I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because I think that's just really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we're almost out of time, and I think we've covered a ton of information today. But the question I've got to ask everybody, and you've already mentioned it, you own rentals today. How long have you owned rentals? How come you bought them? How come you still own them? Are you growing your portfolio? Like, what's your investment strategy? Why are you doing it? And what attracts you to this type of investment vehicle?
Well, at first, like I said, it was buy and flip. That it was buy, fix them up, flip them. And I was buying government-owned foreclosures. So what happened to me was I was the poster child for your early customer.
Yeah.
One of the properties that I put in an offer that was accepted by the government, there was a cloud on title, and being the government, they had no motivation to get it done quickly and fixed. So I'm watching the market start to tank, and all of a sudden my purchase price doesn't look as good as time is going by. We finally close on it, and I put it on the market. I got an offer. After doing the net sheet, it looked like I was going to break even on it, and stubborn Iowa boy said, I don't break even on properties, I make money on properties. So I rejected that offer, and then it sat on the market and sat on the market and sat on the market as it slowly went down. And so I said, what do I do? So I'm like, Google leases I got my 3-page California lease.
You got that California lease going here in Minnesota?
Got that going, and did it on a handshake, and he seems like a nice guy, we'll give it a shot. And all of a sudden I became a landlord. So
how did it work out, that handshake deal?
That one, again, knock on wood, I was extremely lucky. But knowing what I know now, I realize how lucky I was. And actually, until you get that kind of nightmare scenario, you don't put the safeguards in place until sometimes you need them.
Yeah.
Started working here, and I was like, I never did a background check. I never did this. I never did that.
Yeah.
And I slowly have realized, what I got away with, and knock on wood, it always worked out. So,
how many properties do you own now?
Right now I have 3.
Okay.
Again, I wish I should have 15.
Well, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
I wish I had 100.
Yeah.
Because we all know the great time to buy them.
Right.
But we didn't know, you don't have a crystal ball when it's happening. So.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and you said this, and I got this from you when I first started, is, people sometimes have that, analysis from paralysis, where they're trying to find that perfect deal. And to your point about how some realtors aren't educated necessarily on rate of return and all those types of things that we look at, the beauty of rental property and buying investment properties is kind of time heals all wounds in most cases. Yeah. And I always say it's like pizza, even when it's bad, usually it turns out pretty good.
Right.
So sometimes it's just jump in there, buy something, get it going. and start growing your portfolio, because it might not cash flow on day one exactly how you want, but over time, rent prices appreciate, property values appreciate, and almost anything you buy eventually becomes a good investment.
It's the beauty of real estate. It's generally always going up and to the right. If it happens to be going down for a little bit, it's going to go back up.
Right.
It's kind of been proven out since
Right.
the history of real estate. And so when I talk to long-term investors, they're always saying, yeah, when's the right time to buy? Should I wait for the market to go down? We don't know when that's going to happen. People have been talking about that for 2 years, and we're
Right.
still up another 6% since then. And they're sitting on the sideline. And if you're not trying to flip homes like you used to do, if you're flipping homes, timing is important.
Right.
If you're buying to hold for 15, 20, 30 years and create a long-term portfolio, cash flow, passive income, wealth,
Right.
doesn't really matter if you buy when the market's down 10% or up 5%, because in 30 years, it's going to be up
Right.
from where you bought it. And so getting in, getting started, getting the power of single-family rentals working for you, which is being able to leverage other people's money, having a tenant pay down your mortgage, there's tax benefits, all the things around this investment vehicle. The sooner you start, the better off you are.
Right.
And so I agree with you. You don't have to wait around for everything to be perfect. It never is.
Right.
If you invest with a long-term mindset, you can start anytime.
Right. Yeah, to your point, if it's gone up 6% in the last 2 years, that's 6% of rent appreciation you probably have missed out on as well. And,
Right.
So it starts to add up while you're kind of watching everybody else make money on it. So
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for joining us.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks for
all
having
the
me.
advice on how to get started in this space, leasing, finding tenants. A great conversation. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please support us by subscribing, liking the podcast, add comments, share it with your friends, share it on social media. Our purpose here on the podcast is to get education out about this space, about, frankly, a new category that we're building here and making it easy for people to invest in single-family homes. And there's a lot of knowledge on these podcasts that can be shared. So please do that if you've been enjoying the podcast. And if you're looking for help with your real estate investments or want to create a real estate investment plan or a strategy, visit renterswarehouse.com. Submit your questions, submit a web form there. We can have a local real estate advisor, real estate advisor contact you, work you through it. If you have questions you want to hear on the podcast, drop us a note on the website as well. We'll be addressing those. And in the meantime, thanks for checking it out. Check out our previous episodes, and we'll see you next time for episode number 6.
You've been listening to the Rent Estate Podcast with your host, Kevin Ortner. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to rentestate.com for a free rental property analysis and learn how you can list, invest, and rent all under one roof.